if you can personify it that way and you think about it that way and create almost voluntary hardship, bake it into your days, you're better prepared mentally for when life hits you in the face with something you did not expect, but you have all that practice overcoming small hardships that you're not going to completely lose it over this one.
Health, fitness, mindset, nutrition. Live better and longer. I'm Saad, and let's hone in. Now, one of the other things you wrote is that mental toughness seems to be one of the most important components of the people that you interviewed for the book. And there's this one common trait, which is really their ability to endure. Right? The first person that comes to mind is David Goggins. And when he starts his rant about going into hell and loving it. And can you kind of talk about this whole concept of people manufacturing hardships?
Yes. Yeah. So the biggest lesson I learned here is that a lot of people personify pain, and the people who can endure a lot of pain. And what I mean by that is David Goggins is one example. He talks about going into this like dark room where he faces himself and he tells himself the truth, like, you're fat, you're lazy, you lie all the time. What are you going to do about it? And then that's the pain. Like he sees pain as this dark room where you face yourself, your true self. Then you come out the other side and you've transformed into a different person. Courtney Dawn Walter, who's a long distance runner, she's ran through like head injuries and broken feet and everything. She talks about the pain cave, again, personifying pain as a place. She's like, I know I'm going towards it. I'm actively running to it. I know I'm going to encounter it. Inside, it's going to be horrible. I'm going to hallucinate, all these things, but then I'm going to come out the other side. And the reason that's valuable and important is because it helps her think that she's in control of going into the pain cave and equally as in control when she leaves. And then you're like, okay, but what about the people who are like shoved in there against their will, like the involuntary pain that life brings? And I read the memoir of, it's so good, it's called The Sun Does Shine, of Anthony Ray Hinton. He was on death row for 30 years for a crime he didn't commit. And he was in there and he was often in a small cell. And he would say like, you know, I would mentally travel to different places. I had tea with the Queen. I won Wimbledon. I married Halle Berry. He would like travel and use his mind to visualize a different reality. So the whole point of like seeing pain as a place and thinking of it that way is that, like David Goggins says, you know, you go in as one type of person and you come out the other side as a different type of person. And if you don't break, you'll transform. So it's almost seeing it as like a transitional thing that you have to go through. And like, I think it's physical. A lot of times, a lot of athletes do it, but in life, if you can personify it that way and you think about it that way and create almost voluntary hardship, bake it into your days, you're better prepared mentally for when life hits you in the face with something you did not expect, but you have all that practice overcoming small hardships that you're not going to completely lose it over this one.
When you say manufacture hardships, like if I'm starting my day,
yeah,
what should I tell myself or what should I do to basically know that I'm going into my pain cave?
I would literally have a plan. I wouldn't just wing it. So for example, it doesn't just have to be physical challenges either. Yes, of course, like if you want to train for a marathon, you get stronger, run when you don't want to run. If it's raining outside, go run anyway. That again builds little moments of trust with yourself. If you've promised yourself, I'm going to run every single day this week, and then you deliver on those promises, you learn to trust yourself more. But I'm talking about, for example, let's say you really hate negotiating. Put yourself in a position throughout the day where you have to negotiate over something. Put something on Facebook Marketplace and sell it from your house and try to negotiate with the buyer. Little things like that would prepare you for when you have to negotiate a raise with your boss or negotiate a really big deal for your business. It's like if you've never faced that uncomfortable hardship before, you're not going to be ready in the big moments. So bake it into your day.
There are two stories that come up for me. One of the guys that works with us and is one of our co-founders, Seth, when he moved to New York, he was having trouble meeting women. And so he had told himself that he's going to just randomly walk up to women. And he is so the sweetest guy in the world, and just randomly start having conversation and complimenting people. And I was like, you're not going to do it. And that was the thing that taught him how to be comfortable talking to women. And it was amazing to watch him kind of go through the process. For me, it's interesting because the conclusion I've come to is if I push myself right to the point where I'm going to fall apart, like let's say, right, you work 10 days straight, you work 14 hours every day. And on the 8th day, you're not thinking right. Your body feels kind of weird. If you push yourself one more hour, it's that point when you break yourself that you actually become stronger. And it means the next time you're doing it, because you've pushed your boundary a little bit more every single time, it actually increases your overall capacity. And this sounds so silly, but I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan. Huge. And he would always talk about, you can go to the dark side, but you can't let it consume you. And I was like, what does that mean? It sounds so stupid. And I kind of understood about in order to really feel the pain and be immersed by it and learn how to own it and not let it control you, you have to completely envelop yourself in it. But it's easy to get lost in it. Did you come across any research about people talking about how to really use that dark side?
Yes. That's called based on, so Kobe is on the cover of the book and he's in the mental toughness chapter, but I talk about him in the context of, it's the alter ego. So a lot of research supports having an alter ego can help you overcome a lot of hardship, especially in the really, really dark times. So Kobe, when he was in his lowest in his career and he was literally getting booed off the court, people were saying Kobe sucks, like the chants, everything. He was there, obviously, he heard it all, but he realized, he was like, okay, Kobe right now, like I need distance from him because I am in the darkness, but I need to perform. So in the moments where you need to perform and it's really, really hard, a lot of people, including David Goggins, who identifies as Goggins because he thinks David Goggins is a weak person. He's like, I was built, not born. That's what he means. He built this alter ego of Goggins, who's strong, who keeps his promises to himself, all this stuff. Then there's Kobe, who was the Black Mamba. He would go out on court, no longer Kobe, I'm now the Black Mamba. You can boo me all you want, but like I have distance between myself and my aspirational self. And then there's Beyonce, who is super introverted and shy, but when she goes up on that stage, she's like this powerhouse that you would never recognize if you knew her personally, because she has to perform. There's no way you can perform at a stadium with hundreds of thousands of people if you are a shy, introverted person. So again, like going back to creating voluntary hardship and baking it into your day, I was very similar in that I hate public speaking. I think I'm a better writer than I am speaker. And I had all these things in my head. And then an opportunity came where I had to give a keynote speech. And I was like, oh, come on. I did everything to try to not do it. And then I said to myself, okay, well, this is a perfect opportunity to practice what I preach. And let's try it and let's do it. And I would bake small moments into my life to try to do it on a smaller scale, where I would perform for my parents or my husband. They were much more brutal than an audience of 500 people, but it like forced you to say, okay, I'm this kind of person here. When I go on that stage, I become something else. And I think like one time, this is so random, but I took a yoga class and it was really hard. And I still remember the yoga teacher said, right at that moment where you think you're about to give up is when miracles happen. And I think it's what you just said about like, right when you're about to break, something happens that either surprises you about your own abilities or makes you realize like, oh, I do have that skill. And so David Goggins, it's a Navy SEAL thing, but he talks about how a lot of people, when they're about to quit, your mind just gives you an option to exit. That's when you're only 40% done. You have more to go. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's funny that you said 40% because that's the number I hear in my head. And I feel like it was maybe it was Goggins, or I feel like it was another Navy SEAL that says you have so much more in the tank. And I tell myself that all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to do this. I'm like, Saad, stop it. You got so much more. You haven't even really pushed yourself right here.
In what situations does that happen for you? Is it more of like a physical thing when you're running a marathon or something, or is it like in your daily life?
All the time. And a great way to think about it is, right, sometimes we put ourselves in schedules that are 3 weeks straight, back to 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 back. No stopping, always something that comes up. When you think you have some space, you actually don't have space because something else pops into it. And I can literally think about getting off an airplane, going, I don't know how the hell I'm going to get myself through this. And I went, wait, Saad, you, first of all, you get to do this. You chose this life. You should feel grateful. This is a gift that you're chasing your dream. And then on top of it too, there are people that would die to be in your place. And you know what? You've been training for this for 20 years. Like, this is your moment. Make sure that you take advantage of it. And the second that happens and you start doing that thing, you're like, oh, you're right. It was completely mental. It was something I was telling myself in my head.
Yeah. And this is exactly, I talk about the difference in the book about listening to yourself and talking to yourself. And that was the perfect example. It's like your first instinct when something goes wrong or something is painful is to listen to yourself. Like, oh my God, I can't do this. What the hell did I sign up for? Why am I doing this? My foot hurts. But then talking to yourself is like when you actively take control of the inner narrator and you start saying, like, I was watching this video of a football player recently. I can't tell you who, because I don't know football, but it was really good. He was mic'd, and right before the game, he was talking to himself and you heard everything. And he was like, all right, like, this is the moment. This is what you've been training for. This is what you're made to do. And like, he was telling himself the things that a coach would normally tell you, but he took control of that voice and hyped himself up for that moment. So it's like, I think a lot of us just run on autopilot, unfortunately, and we just listen to whatever our negative internal narrator says. And a lot of times you'll realize that voice isn't actually you. It's a lot of times the trolls on the internet and what they've said, or like an abusive parent at some point. Like, it's often not your voice, that super, super critical negative voice. So it's like taking control of that and making it useful.